in pairs figure skating, stay with me on this. Don't. No, I saw you reaching for the pause. Just hear me out. Pairs figure skating. When the man reaches to grab the woman by the hips for the purpose of spinning her up in the air, that happened to TJ Watt in Indianapolis. And no flag was thrown and a touchdown was scored. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Pairs Figure Skating. Comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey, baseball, or hey, also football on occasion. I also offer daily shots of all three of the teams in Pittsburgh that I cover. But this one's opening up with the continuing saga, maybe the ugliest edition yet, of how and or why the NFL won't do anything about edge rushers in general being held. And I'm starting with that on purpose because I really can't stand when people talk about refs favoring this team or this player or that player. When they're bad, they're just bad. And when there's a bad guideline, it's just a bad guideline. I couldn't be more convinced, particularly over these past 2 seasons and change, that the league wants nothing to do with edge rushers piling up 20 to 25 sacks for the simple reason that they don't want to see, meaning the owners don't want to see, meaning Roger Goodell's bosses don't want to see their $250 million investments go up in flames just because the other team gets a tackle for a loss. So rather than turn it into flag football or whatever it was that Minkah Fitzpatrick was accusing everybody of the other day, they just tell the refs, listen, just cool it with the holding on the edge rushers. And that's happened. But what hadn't happened before this was to have an opponent openly speak of having some specific but unstated, quote, plan, end quote, to neutralize TJ. Shane Steichen, head coach of the Colts, first brought it up in a press conference earlier in the week. And then the offensive coordinator in Indianapolis, whose name I swear is Jim Bob Cooter. I couldn't make that up. Like in my weirdest mood, I couldn't make up Jim Bob Cooter. Jim Bob Cooter said, quote, "We'll certainly have a plan for him," end quote. So the game ends, and TJ comes away with just 2 quarterback pressures on 29 pass rushing snaps, which is way below the TJ norm. But the other stat that came out of all of the various studies of the All-22 film was that the Colts used their tight ends to make some kind of contact with TJ on 14 of those pass rushing snaps. So again, it's 14 out of 29. So the Colts afterward in their locker room and the coach and everybody else were talking about how the TJ plan worked. And yay us, we really shut him down. We knew what we were going to do. Our tight ends did a great job. No one mentions that Braden Smith, the right tackle, used both of his hands. This is that pairs figure skating reference again, to hold TJ by the waist after TJ had admirably blown right by him. And as a result, TJ didn't get to Joe Flacco. As a result, Flacco throws a touchdown pass, whereas he would have been sacked. If he'd been sacked, the Colts face 3rd and long. Colts maybe get a field goal as opposed to a touchdown. And don't let me remind you what the final score was. The other thing that the Colts didn't mention was that they held like crazy. That Smith in particular, he was number 72 in blue in that game, held all day, and flagrantly so, as did some of these heroic tight ends who helped on their mission. And look, full credit to the Indianapolis coaching staff. In sports, if you're not taking fullest advantage of the way the rules are being called, then you're probably losing. But for the Colts to do this, to do systematic holding, and that's what it was. I've never seen TJ held like he was in this game. For them to do that, but then to advertise in advance that they had some kind of super fancy scheme, as if chipping TJ, the most chipped edge rusher in the NFL, was some revolutionary concept, that's just brilliant. That's brilliant. They're setting up the plot. They're setting up the finish. And by the time it's done, they just say, wow, we did it. Hooray us. And then nobody bothers to check what they actually did. And you want to know something? There's a part of me that's actually okay with all of this. Part of me, really, really small part of me. But I'll put that forth conditionally. I submit, right here and now, that the NFL should give the Steelers the exact amount of cap space that they've invested in this superhuman athlete to do superhuman things, since the NFL is the one stopping him, not the Colts. Goodell's doing that. The owners are doing that. They're doing it to edge rushers across the league. So fine, however much TJ is making, put that right back into the cap space, and the Steelers can go out and get themselves, some big superstar wide receiver, because wide receivers are still, at least for now, allowed to play actual football. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. I only wish that today's J1Q came from Jim Bob Cooter in Indianapolis. As it is, it comes from Bub. No, I'm serious. All the names today. Bub says, DK, here's my question. What is up with Patrick Queen? Do you think the Steelers aren't using him to his game? Correct me if I'm wrong, please, but when he was with the Ravens and the Steelers played them, I swear his name was called the whole game. Or is this just a nod to the Ravens' other linebacker, who was just so good that the other team ran away from him and into Queen? I was very excited for us to sign this guy, and now it's like blah and just so mid. It's crazy. I'll start by identifying Roquan Smith, who is an exceptional defensive player, who is a better player, and I say this respectfully to Queen, than Queen. I don't believe there'd be anyone anywhere, including Queen himself, who'd deny that. But Queen's a really good football player in his own right. The numbers that he put up in Baltimore weren't an accident, and I'm sure Smith influenced them in the same way that all great defensive players will influence those around them. But if you were excited, Bub, or Jim Bub, that's what we should do today. We're going to mix them both. They're going to be Jim Bub. If you were excited about him before Jim Bub, I would strongly suggest you hold on to that. And the reason for that is Queen's making plays. He's making more plays the past 2 weeks, a lot more than he had the previous 2 weeks. He did not have a great showing in coverage Sunday in Indianapolis. But he and I spoke after the game out there, as we always do after every game. And he told me, well, there were some things that the Colts threw at him that he wasn't necessarily expecting. A lot of things changed when Joe Flacco came in to replace Anthony Richardson. I mean, you can't have more extreme opposites at that position than what Indianapolis unwittingly was able to pull off. But he thinks, and Peyton Wilson thinks, and Landon Roberts thinks, that the inside linebackers, who I will remind, faced one of the biggest challenges on the entire team coming into the 2024 season in terms of how much they had to learn, how much they had to communicate out. Remember, that's also a big part of Queen's job. And from there, how much is just athletic reflex versus thinking about this and thinking about that. And this guy's running this way to pull me over here, but I should be over there. That's not instant. There is a reason that the Steelers from a decade and change ago would praise James Ferrier more than any of the living legends who were around him, because Ferrier was the one who kept it all together. Ferrier was the one who made it all make sense, from Casey Hampton to James Harrison back to Troy Polamalu and everyone else. Queen has not been in this role with this team for even a month yet. I'm going to go to bat for him here. I respect the effort that he's putting in. I respect the improvement that we're seeing from week to week. It's not a video game. They have to adjust to humans. I appreciate the question. I genuinely do. I'm glad you brought it up. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Pairs Figure Skating, and we'll be back with another one of these tomorrow.